Well, hello, welcome. My name is Caleb Sanders. I'm a history teacher and educator, and I love good stories and good storytelling. And today I wanted to tell you about a series and introduce it, hopefully, to some of you that I have never heard about. And this just goes to show that there are some amazing authors out there that are hard to find out about. Even when they're best-selling New York Times authors who have 15 different languages publishing over 1 million of their books, it can surprise you how many amazing books and authors are out there that you just never hear about. So let me tell you about the Soulbound Saga by Taran Matharu. I've never heard of him. Please tell me if I have said that wrong. So Taran apparently is the best-selling author for something called the Summoner series, which I've never heard of. I'll check that out at some point. But I was checking out my local library on Libby and saw an audiobook pop up, and it just was called Dragon Rider. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting, Dragon Rider. Let's check into it. And I started reading about it, and I was like, this sounds really interesting, especially from a historic standpoint. And I listened to it, loved it, finished the second book. It was good. And so I just want to tell you about some of the details. This is spoiler free, but to try to convince you to check out this series that most people have not even heard about. So the Soulbound Saga is part of what's called cultivation fantasy, an idea that you have a character who, through trial, through development, through the storyline, is able to cultivate and develop their magic, their talents, their skills, to be able to, not in a lit RPG way, become better and more powerful in a quicker way. This book very much feels loosely inspired by Game of Thrones. Some of the twists and turns that you see along the way, you can see having, maybe not as overtly, but it has Game of Thrones-esque style of plot twists and of character choices. And it is very much in that line of storytelling. This series is very historic in its feel, and many of the details I'm going to mention along the way, you can see real one-to-one connections to historic events and peoples. Some of the historic elements that you see along the way are things like hostage taking after a war, where you have the heirs of a kingdom being taken by the conquerors in order to maintain peace and security, and allowing the victors to really benefit from achieving victory over whoever they have conquered. That's something you see throughout history. Doesn't matter what era, what culture, that is something you see, and that is something central to this point. Some of the peoples that you meet along the way that are very reminiscent of Earth's historical civilizations, you have the Sabines, which is a massive empire, which if you know anything about Roman history, the Sabines were a small people group to the north of the Roman city-state who they eventually conquered. And so Sabines, Roman, it kind of makes sense. And they are very Roman in their character. You also have the people called the Dansk from the north that are very reminiscent of the Danish Vikings, so there's some connections there. And then you have the Scythians, who historically were a nomadic, pastoral, horse archer civilization. And yeah, there's some elements of that. We'll get into some of the details here in a second. And then you have the Phoenix Empire, which comes across with their spices and silks, very much reminiscent of East Asian, more specifically Chinese culture. And so you see these remnants and elements kind of trickled through the story, and it's very gripping, and it makes it feel very familiar. What's really cool is how the magic system comes to play. There are some magic elements that aren't related to bonding to animals. Soul bonding is what they call it. But majority of people who can do magic, it comes from soul bonding with creatures. Now, there's not a one-to-one ratio of this people only bonds with this, but there are some commonalities. So the Sabine, they traditionally bond to griffins. So you have griffin riders who are a central aspect of the military, of the Sabine military, which their legions are very reminiscent, again, of the Roman Empire. Add in some flying lion, eagle creatures, and magic, and whip swords and stuff, and it's, yeah, pretty cool. When you get to the Scythians, this is something that's really cool because they majority bond to what are called Kiroi, which if you know early history, is based off of the woolly rhinoceros, which you think about riding a woolly rhinoceros into battle, that would be terrifying to have that charging at you, just saying. And so you have these different cultures where you know they've fought over time. You have the Dansk, they're known for their dragons, which are fewer. You think dragons in the ice, but that kind of makes sense. Hot ice makes sense. And there's fewer of them, but they are still very powerful because of the isolated nature of their kingdom. You have the Phoenix, I'm assuming there's bird stuff. You have peoples that bonded birds. You have the mountainous people that bonded dire wolves and things. You even have some people who maybe have bonded to like rats and mice, and they are utilized in espionage and spying. So there's some really cool things that come into play there. especially once you start adding in some of the magic elements from the story. Now, world building, historical basis, that's all well and good, but what about the characters? You follow a central character by the name of Jai. He is a war orphan. He's biracial, so he's facing some stigmatism from both sides, from his father's people and then from the people he's conquered. He is a war orphan. He is the third son of one of the rulers of the Scythians who was conquered by the Sabines. Again, Romans conquering the horse archer people that are reminiscent of like the steppe people, the Scythians of history, or even going over to the Mongols, a little more like it. And Jai is a servant to the emperor, at least the retired emperor, and you follow him as he is developing, growing. You see his brothers, you see their relationships, and ultimately you see his quest to be able to achieve his freedom and make it back to his father's people. And I won't give any spoilers, but between the two books that are out as of right now, this was published back in 2024, second book in 2025. Between both of these books that are out, you see this character go from being basically a toilet cleaner all the way to a leadership in something that is very reminiscent, let's just say, of Genghis Khan. His unification of the steppe people. We'll just leave it there. If you know anything about history, that should give you some clues about where this story kind of goes and where it's reminiscent of. And so Jai is a character who is deeply flawed. He has a lot of insecurities because of where he's been brought up and what he's been through. But ultimately, he's a character that you come to really admire, especially as you see his intelligence and the people along the way who help him out. Very, wouldn't say riveting, but a strong central character. You meet other characters along the way. You meet Erica. She's a Dansk princess who as well is involved in parts along the way. Is she a damsel in distress? No, because she's a brilliant fighter and she's been trained for years as a dragon rider. But there are some elements along the way that you would maybe like to see her developed and used more. But she is a strong character, and I'm really hoping that there's a third book that develops these characters more. And then another character that, at least in the first book, is very central is a guy named Titus. He's the prince. He's the crown prince and heir to the Sabine, again, the Romanesque, people who've conquered Jai's father's people. And let's just say Taran did a great job writing this character Titus, because Titus, if anybody can give Joffrey from Game of Thrones a run for their money to where you just want to punch them in the face.
Very amusing.
Titus does that. Another element that is similar to Game of Thrones, let's just say it's not the Red Wedding. There's some amazing scenes in this book series that very good to read or listen to, whichever one you do. Some amazing things about the Soulbound Saga is some of the themes of this element of where do you get your identity from? Is it from your heritage? Is it from something you develop and learn and grow and bring about? Where's your identity and where's your purpose? What are you looking for in life? What are you hoping to do in life? What is the legacy of war and the consequences for peoples and decisions that have long-lasting implications? And ultimately, what is freedom, and how do you maintain your culture? How do you maintain your freedom and your future, especially when certain young people come to power who want to make a name for themselves? We'll just say that. This series is very well written. I would say that there are some things that are very convenient along the way. A lot of plot devices that just happen that, it works. You need it to drive the story forward, but sometimes you would like things to happen in a little more organic way and not feel shoehorned in. But the world building, the cultures of this, the characterization, the magic system, that could be a little more fleshed out, but I think it develops well along the way, especially with some of the characters that come along. It's really good. That's some of the strengths of this series. And obviously the historic references are going to be great. While the plot is very simple and linear in progression, the twists that come along the way really do elevate the story to another level. I will say that as a book that is slated as Dragon Rider, and then the Tainted Khan, eventually there's some dragon elements that come in. You have to read the book to find out. It feels like that's something that feels a little shoehorned in. Dragon Rider, if you read it, you'll find out. Something that could have been utilized a little bit more, but it does develop organically, but it feels a little forced at times, a little bit. I would say between these two books, Dragon Rider, the first book, I would give it a solid B. So like a 4 to 4.5 stars. The sequel, Tainted Khan, solid book. I would give it more of a C plus B minus, definitely at that like 3.5 to 4 stars mode. So as a series, I would give this like a B minus. This is a 4 to a 4.25, whatever. Stars don't make sense. Grades make sense to me as an educator. So I would give it a good, solid B minus. Very much meets expectations, has some amazing details, but some of the plot devices and I would say some of the linear progression just feels very episodic in nature, and some things that I feel like could just develop a little more cleanly for us as a reader. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate every single view and like and comment that I get along the way. I'm over 500 subscribers. This is definitely a very part-time side gig for me, and I would love to get maybe 1,000 subscribers by Christmas, but ultimately, I mean, even just a few hundred more is something that'd be great. So hope you have a fantastic, amazing day. God bless. Go read some amazing stories. Have a great day. Make somebody smile. Bye-bye.